Hello and welcome to another episode of my podcast series and stuff like that. So, we finally did it. We made it to the end of 2022. It's been one hell of a year. A lot of ups and downs. But yeah, things have been going really well. A lot of stuff has happened over the past 2 weeks. One of that, of course, being Christmas. I got a brand new guitar, very, very handsome, very sexy. Her name, because every time that I get a new instrument, I let Instagram decide by vote what their name is, and my new guitar's name is Sapphire, and I really like that. That's pretty cool. Yeah, I do feel like Linda and Wendy were two other really good options. Wendy, of course, being the option that I picked, but oh well. Yeah. So this is it, eh? This is the last episode of and stuff like that for the year, and of course the last episode for the series, for the season. Episode 6, season 1, and this is the end. I wonder if anything's going to happen at the end, if this is just going to be like a Shortland Street cliffhanger. Speaking of which, I'm going to go on a quick tangent here for a minute, but I feel like for Shortland Street's 30th year, that the cliffhanger was a little bit, meh. It was very mid. Basically, like, it wasn't as good as it could have been. The 30th anniversary wasn't as good as it could have been. I'll tell you what's an absolute great anniversary episode for Shortland Street: 25. The 25th anniversary special for Shortland Street was absolutely incredible. It had like half a year's worth of build-up, and when it eventually got there, it was one of the most heart-pounding episodes of it was one of the most heart-pounding episodes that I'd ever seen, because there was a lot of things at stake. But for this year, what they did was they just took an ordinary episode and then added a fucking drag musical for 30 years. I've got nothing wrong with drag. I've no problem with drag. Nothing against it. I just admit that it's not my thing. But, come on. After 30 years, you couldn't give us something like the 25th again. And the cliffhanger, even if I haven't watched the show for months and months and months, I commit myself to watching this season, I commit myself to watching the series finale every year, just because of the way I used to feel about it when growing up, just because of the way I used to feel about it growing up. And to be honest, this year's season finale was kind of, it could have been better. And the thing is, last year's was good, Last year's was good. And to top it off, they also added Shortland Street Retribution. I'm going on a whole tangent here about a show that's only available to us in New Zealand. But Shortland Street Retribution, honestly, is absolutely incredible. It is it is so amazing. And it wasn't even a part of the actual show. It was just a spin-off. That's what it was. It was just a spin-off and they do that every year. Shortland Street normally does. They've been doing it for a couple of years. You had what did you have? You had Drew. Yeah, you had Drew and Boyd. Yeah, Drew and Boyd when Drew was on house arrest, I believe, for something to do with his taxes. I'm not even kidding. And then you had another thing. Yeah, you had Drew and Harper's holiday, but basically they were only on the plane and then they got off. But it was alright. Then you had Louie and Cherise, I believe her name was. And then you have Shortland Street Retribution, and it was honestly one of the greatest things I'd ever seen. because it was so good. But they've not done anything like that this year. And this year they've done no spin-off, no nothing. It just ends. But yeah, you know, like it's probably I don't know. It may be better next year. I'm probably going to watch a couple episodes next year, and of course the series finale. But I digress. We've been off topic for about a good, like, I don't know, 3.5 minutes now about Shortland Street, a thing that's only available to us here in New Zealand. But anyway, we're going to get on with the actual topic of the podcast. It's the end of the year, so what better topic to discuss than me? Because that's what I always do. In this episode, I'm going to be talking about my history with podcasting, and like broadcasting and other kind of media like that. Because yes, this is not my first podcast. This is not the first podcast I've been a part of. This is the first podcast that I've run completely independently. But you know, yeah. So my first real experience in broadcasting was on the radio, and I forget when, because it was such a long time ago. It must have been like 2013. But basically, every Saturday or Sunday, my dad would go into this place, and he would sit down with this lady and would record bits of audio for the radio. Because, my dad worked at Forward, and it was just one of the things that he would do. And one day he brought me along, and she asked me, hey, do you want to be in an ad? And I said, yeah, sure. And I did. And I forget how old I was, but I was way younger. Yeah, this has got to be like almost 10 years ago. This is like a good 9 years ago. So I was about, I don't know, 7, 8. I was young. I was very young. I was a very stupid child. And my voice is so completely different to how it is now. That's what 10 years plus puberty does to you. But yeah, so what we're going to do, this has rarely been heard. Like, this has not been heard since about 2013. So we're going to play this. We're going to play this. Very few of my friends have actually heard this because I've showed it to them. But we're actually going to listen to this right now. We're going to listen to it. Here we go. You're going to hear how bad I sound.
Hi, West Coast. My mum and dad always get their cars serviced at Grey Ford, the best place on the West Coast. No questions.
So a little bit of how that came to be. You may have noticed there was a cutoff between my mum and dad always get their car service at Grey Ford. Cut the best place on the West Coast. It's because I kept fucking up the line. I kept saying like the breast place on the West Coast or something. And I think one of the things I said was breast. But that's so funny. What's also funny is that my dad told me what to say. So before we hit record, he would just say, say, hi, West Coast. My mum and dad always get their car serviced at Grey Ford, the best place on the West Coast. And then he said to me, no questions. What I'm assuming is that he said to me no questions so that I wouldn't ask any questions or something on the thing. I don't know. But that's why you heard my dad laughing after I said no questions into the mic. Yeah. Yeah, so that aired for a little bit, and that was pretty cool. I never got a chance to hear it on the radio, but I have the MP3, so I'm quite happy with that. Yeah, so that was my first experience in broadcast. My next experience was not until quite a few years later, in about 2017, maybe? I think it was either like very late 2016 or at some point in 2017, and I think it was some point in 2017. So what had happened is that my friend Kyle had teamed up with a couple of other people and had started like a radio station, which was really cool. And I saw the poster in the school and I decided that I was going to be a part of it. So that was a thing. Not that many people know about it, surprisingly, because the range was so shit. I'm not even kidding. The range was so terrible. So basically, I'm gonna do a couple of things. So yeah, basically, how it started for the first couple of for the first like month or so, and I believe it was every 2 weeks or once a week. It was either once a week or once every 2 weeks. But basically what would happen is we would go to this house, we would sit around this table and we would just record, basically. We never went live. We didn't go live for a couple more years. But yeah, that was a thing and that happened and I had a lot of fun with it in the early days. And then we had to move our base of operations, and that's when it kind of went radio silent for about a year. It wasn't until I remembered it a little while later, I think it was 2018. Yeah, it was some point in 2018 that I asked Kyle whatever happened with the radio thing, and he's like, oh yeah, we've got that working. And so yeah, I rejoined basically, even though I never left. But I rejoined, and we did it, and we broadcast it from the Regent Theatre, which is a little movie theatre in our town. And let me tell you, the range was so shit. I'm surprised, I'm not even surprised that no one ever heard about it because the range was so terrible. Let me tell you. So in our town, we have a flood wall, right? Not that far away from the region. It's about like a minute and a half away by foot. You start walking there, and before you get to the flood wall, the signal starts to cut out. I'm not even kidding. From the door of the Regent to like the flood wall, before the flood wall, the thing starts cutting out. That's how pathetic the range was. You would only be able to listen to it if you had it tuned. If you had your radio tuned to 180 to 180 and you were going through the roundabout. And that was it. That's the only way you would listen to it, or else you'd be parked outside the Regent just listening to it. Now, for a little while, when we were in the Regent, we still didn't go live. We just recorded. But eventually, we did decide. We did end up going live, and that lasted for quite a few months. And it was pretty fun. I managed to record. I managed to be able to set up the setup, basically, to get everything working and to broadcast myself. And it was pretty fun. It was quite boring at times when I would go live and it would just be me, because you just hear me talking and then like no one else would respond. That's the thing. That's why, one time I did bring along a friend of mine, Autumn. I did bring her along as kind of conversational thing, because there was no one else there. And from what I remember, I still think there was a lot of silence, and I tried to make up for it. I'm much better at filling in the silent gaps now because I talk a lot, but back then, yeah, it didn't really go that great, but it was still a really cool thing to be able to say, because it was still cool. I was quite happy with that. So there were a couple of other things that happened during the time that I was helping run that radio station, is that we got invited on to another radio station. It was pretty low key. You probably haven't heard of them. The hits. Yeah, they're pretty low key, pretty. All right, I'm messing with you. We were actually on the Hits radio station. It was so cool. It was so fun. Because even though I just sat there for most of it and did not say a word, it was just such a cool experience, It was a really cool thing. I even got to take home a souvenir, which I have actually completely lost now that I think about it. It is completely gone. Oh, well. Yeah, but it was really cool. Oh, God, sorry. You can see in some of the early videos on my other channel, Mackenzie H, that you can see the souvenir. It was a little pop thing. It was a little pop filter that goes over your microphone. That was pretty cool. So why were we on the Hits? Me and the other guys who were running the radio were on the Hits, basically to promote Youth Week, and to show off that we had our own radio station, and that was a part of Youth Week. And it was really cool. Like it really was incredible. Like, it was so cool. We even played a game afterwards, and I forget which game it was. It was probably like Star Wars Family Feud. Actually, I'm pretty confident it was Star Wars Family Feud. So that was fun, yeah. As it was very cool. But that wasn't the only time I've been in that radio station, in that studio. God, I'm going to be yawning so much. I should be in bed by now. Oh, well. So that wasn't the only times I've been in that studio. I went in the studio a couple more times in 2019 and a little bit in 2020 to record radio ads for the school, because that's another thing that we did. So our school, much like other schools, needs to get their name out there, to enlist more children to go to their school so they can suck more money from parents, because honestly, so many people went to the school, and there was like ridiculous charges for uniform, and every single student had to buy at least one. So they made a shit ton of money. and they that's just my thoughts on school. Maybe it's because I didn't really like the school, but now that I'm out, I can say that. So now that I'm out, I'm talking about it like it's a prison. But anyway, I'm not going to name the school, but those who know me and listen to the podcast can probably take a really good guess. But basically, our school used like a kind of thing. A couple of times we would go down to the radio station and we would record a radio ad. Sometimes it was like saying like the school would like to congratulate these people for doing things, or we're looking for new board members or something. I don't know. I didn't really pay much attention to those. Even the ones that I read out, I didn't pay attention. But basically, me and a friend, and we were sometimes joined by a couple of other people, usually went down and we recorded radio bits. And it was pretty cool. Yeah, I think I'm fairly confident I still have one of those scripts, one if not two of them, in my room somewhere, probably in a drawer of the other paper and memorabilia stuff. I don't know what it's memorabilia of, but it just exists. Yeah. So for about a good quite a bit of 2019 was definitely radio. Like a nice bite. of 2019 was radio, and it was really fun. I was really happy for the entire time. I actually don't think it was 2019. I think it was 2018. Yeah, it was 2018. Holy crap. That's almost 5 years ago. Oh, jeez, mate. What happened? But yeah, so it was very cool. That was a lot of my experience. Oh, God, sorry. That was a lot of my experience with early, there was a lot of my early experience with the radio. And at some point one day I would like to get back into it, because I do think that would be pretty cool. Like, yeah, just being on the radio, that's cool. You know? Actually, I was on the radio one other time. I believe it was back in 2017. I was on the radio once then. Do I want to mention this story? You know what? Fuck it. I'm going to mention this story. So, I used to have a radio in my room. We're going to go through the whole thing, but I used to have a radio in my room to like listen to music to fall asleep. Now, most of the stuff that would play on the radio would be like modern or like old rock kind of stuff, and my music taste hadn't grown to the point where I liked that stuff yet, because I didn't like indie rock until like mid to late 2021. That wasn't when I started to kind of like it, to the point where I am now like classify indie rock as one of my like favorite genres of music. But yeah, back in 2017, my music taste was video game soundtracks or TV show soundtracks and other kind of stuff, and classical music. I didn't have like, you know what I'm saying. Oh, what the fuck is going on? Why am I so tired? So I used to have a radio beside my bed, and it would always be tuned to this Christian radio station, because that, to my like 12, 13-year-old mind, that was the most soothing thing. You know, it was the nicest thing on the radio. One day, actually, I think it was like every day. At the start of the day, they would do this like thing where they would give you like something, like say if you ate chocolate today, which I believe was my thing. If you ate chocolate, then you could call in, and you could answer like a question. There wasn't any prize involved. It was just for fun. I don't know what I would have done if there were like a prize involved. But yeah, I was basically on this radio, and it wasn't apparent to me that it was a Christian radio until my mum pointed it out afterwards. I find that very funny. And that is the first time I've thought about that in years. I'm not even joking. But yeah, that was a lot of my early radio things. The next couple of years were quite silent, to be completely honest. They were silent until about 2021, when me and Kyle and a couple of other people with the youth trust of our town started talking about starting a podcast very similar to the radio station that we did, which was also for the youth trust. We had a couple of ideas. We actually came up with a name on the night, and we had a bunch of ideas. We called it the Mac and Cheese Podcast, and yeah, so my childhood nickname was Macca. Another one of them was Mac and Cheese. So you can kind of guess where the Mac and Cheese aspect of the name came from, and surprisingly, it wasn't my idea. You would think it would be my idea because of what a narcissist I am. I'm not. But yeah, that really was not my idea. That was Kyle's. And we we were talking about having a third person join. That didn't end up happening. And we recorded a couple of episodes. Actually, fun fact, we used Buzzsprout to upload the podcast episodes. And the fun fact about that is that Buzzsprout is the same service I use to upload my podcast today, which is very cool. And it is very cool. Yeah. So we recorded a couple of episodes, and it went all right. You know, it could have gone better, probably. I wish it did. We weren't very consistent with it, to be honest. As soon as Kyle decided that he was going to leave, the whole thing just kind of fell apart because I needed to get a new host. And that would mean that I would be in charge of the podcast, and I would, of course, be in charge with finding a new host as well, a new co-host. So I brought in a friend of mine, Anthony, and we recorded one episode and we never uploaded it. And the thing just kind of sat there and died. Yep, we did absolutely nothing about it. It just died. It is one of it. Yeah, it is so tragic because it would have been cool. It had like a whole kind of theme and everything, and I did like 2 songs. I sang 2 songs on the podcast, and that's actually kind of where I got the idea of singing podcasts at the end of this episode, is that I did it twice. One of them was a really bad cover of Since I Saw Vienna. If you know me, you'll know that for me, it is very difficult to play that song. It is. It just is. Like, it's getting better. It's better than it was when I recorded it for the podcast. But yeah, no, it wasn't good then. Yeah. So yeah, that was my first podcast, and now I'm here doing this podcast here since it's been a while since I've been on radio, but I've decided to make the most of it by running this podcast, basically. I also decided to start running this podcast because I was bored one night and I just decided, fuck it, why not? It was one of those things where it's just like, you do it because you got nothing else to do. Yeah. And speaking of nothing else to do, I have nothing else to say. I kind of ran out of ideas. I didn't think about how long I would talk about this. I've actually talked about this longer than I thought. Let's see, what's in my notes app? What are my ideas for podcast episodes? Maybe I could talk about one of those. Please. Films I've made. Should we talk about films I've made? Yeah, fuck it, why not? So, films I've made. I'm a filmmaker. It's very cool. It's very cool being a filmmaker because you get to make films and then people go, wow, and then never watch it again. But seriously, I do consider myself to be a filmmaker. My 2020 videos on the Mackenzie H channel should prove that, because during that time I uploaded a lot of scripted videos, and it was very fun. The whole thing was a very nice experience, and I want to get back into doing that because I think it would be really cool, especially with all the skills I have now, going on from 2 years ago, building on from stuff that I learned 2 years ago, and that's just cool, it's just cool. It's just cool. Yeah, 2-3 years ago. But it's cool, because also in 2019 I worked with Kyle on a short film, and it was pretty good. I was quite happy about that. We actually worked on the film together, basically he approved the script. So I wrote a script at the start. I wrote a first script and he didn't really like it. Then I wrote a second script and he liked that better. And then we recorded the film and I did pretty much all of the work. He was just a part of it. He was in the film. I think I definitely have mentioned it at some point, but it's called the YouTube algorithm. But, hold on, have I already talked about this? Short films and skits. I've already talked about this. I've already talked about this topic. What's going on? Why haven't I haven't updated this list in ages. What the hell? Oh, God. What other things have I got? What other things can I talk about? I forgot that I already did this. Oh, wow. And I'm not... The funny thing is, I'm not cutting that bit out. That's staying in there. And I'm going to see... I'm laughing at you now because when I realized that I'd done this already, you realized that you probably already listened to this before, unless this is the first one you're seeing, in which case, don't start with this one. Don't start with this one. This is the last episode. Go back. But yeah, yeah. Oh, God. I only just... Yeah, and the funny thing is, you only just realized it as well. That sucks. I've got nothing else to talk about. Come on. Give me something to talk about. Come on, browse my phone. Find something. Movies! Movies I want to watch at some point. I have a list of movies that I want to watch at some point. Let's talk about that for 15 minutes. Yeah, because I've got to fill in the time. Right, so, a little while ago, a couple weeks ago, I started making a list of films that I wanted to watch. There isn't that many on the list. There's about like 10 or so, but they are all films that at some point I need to watch. So the first one at the top of the list was 500 Days of Summer. I've crossed that out because I've seen it. I did end up watching 500 Days of Summer, and let me tell you, it is a good film. I really like the film. It's really cool. Yeah, and it is actually the reason why 3 of the Smiths songs are in my library. Yeah, that movie kind of showed me those 3 songs, and I was like, oh, cool. And then I saved them in my library, and now they're there. Yeah. But 500 Days of Summer, that's a really good film. I really enjoy that. Benny and Jolene. The only reason so now we're getting into the films that I haven't watched, but I want to. Benny and Jolene. I wouldn't be surprised if you haven't heard the name of that film. If you have, then yeah, that's pretty cool. So basically, the only reason why I want to watch this film is because this film is associated with Los Campesinos. Los Campesinos. One of my favorite band. Yeah. They wrote and made and produced and recorded and thinged a song for the credits, and it's used in the trailer, Little Mouth. It's a pretty good song, but apparently Benny and Jolene, the film, is not rated well. Basically, from what I understand about it, it's about 2 folk musicians. You know about it? Yeah, but at some point I do want to watch that film because I do think it could be cool. Whiplash. It's a music film, basically. It's a music film, and I thought, why not? You know? Yeah, I haven't seen it yet, but I do know it's on Netflix, and at some point next year I will have to watch it. It's crazy to think that next year is like a day away. Tomorrow. Yeah, I don't know why I started singing that. Yeah. Bohemian Rhapsody, I know I bought my mum the DVD, but I haven't seen it. I should, because from what I've heard, it's a pretty good film. It's not like an accurate representation of Freddie Mercury or the band or anything, but yeah. Oh, by the way, please ignore the fact that I'm chewing gum. I'm just, trying to fill the time and quench the hunger. I don't know what I'm saying. But yeah. Elvis, that was another film I plan on watching. And that was actually a film that I meant to go and see when it was in theaters. And I just never got around to it. And it's kind of sad a little bit, but yeah. I do plan on going and seeing it at some point, some way, somehow. American Psycho. Really, what makes me want to watch that film is just like internet culture. Kind of just like they've talked about the film and like, but very vaguely. And I'm like, you know what? Why the hell not? At some point, I want to watch that. The Menu. This is a film that's been recommended to me. I don't know very much about it. The Black Phone. That was a film that I remembered that I was interested in as my friend was talking to me about The Menu. Good Morning Vietnam. Really, the only reason that I have like a little interest in watching this is because of the like the radio aspect, because apparently there's like some sort of radio thing in it. A lot of these films I don't know much about, but that's really because I haven't seen them. I know that there is another film that I think maybe in cinemas, or was in cinemas at some point, but I think it's about like this like android doll or something, this like little girl. I don't know. I'm sorry. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see how I do with like the Menu and the Black Phone and the more like horror kind of films. Oh, that reminds me, I've got another film to add to there when it does come out. Five Nights at Freddy's. Because I was a really big fan of Five Nights at Freddy's from about 2018 to 2020. I was a really big Five Nights at Freddy's fan. Yeah, and I still kind of am, I guess, just a little bit. But yeah, when the film does come out, I do have to go and see it. Like, it is just... It's just lore. It would just be by lore. I would have to go and see it. Yeah. And I would have to take someone with me. That's so cool now. But, yeah. Oh, gosh. It's 12 o'clock. It's New Year's Eve, guys. I know it'll be New Year's Eve by the time this is uploaded, but that's pretty cool. It's the 31st of December. The brand new year is 1 day away. That's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. It like every year without fail, it always feels weird to say the name of the next year. And it's because like your brain like just kind of hasn't processed the fact that you're still in that year. Like I bet in 2022 some of us were still thinking that like 2020 wasn't that long ago, and it really wasn't. But like yeah. But it's pretty cool, like we're almost we are so close to the end of this year. We're just a day away. Yeah, and that's the movies that I have on my to watch list, and that's really the last thing I can talk about. So, and I guess that's it. I do want to go on a quick soppy tangent here and just say thank you for the support. I started the music channel in September 2021, and it was absolutely amazing back then, and it's still great now. I do plan on uploading more like actual covers when it comes to 2023. I have a couple of really good ideas planned. There's definitely going to be more music, more album releases. I do plan on every year fulfilling a quota of at least one album, one EP, and one single at various points throughout the year. That is something that I want to fulfill, and it's something that I've done this year. But yeah, it's the end of the series now. Not the series. It's the end of the season, end of the first season. So how this is going to work is that I'm going to take a break over the next 4 weeks, which means that the podcast will be returning on the 28th of January, 2023. So yeah. At some point during the next season, I will be refurbishing the two previous the two podcast episodes from my other series, Mackenzie's Little Podcast that happened over there on the music channel. I'm going to repurpose them as kind of like archived things and upload them onto here for everyone to enjoy. But yeah. This will be the last episode of the year, the last episode of the first season, and I will be returning with 6 more episodes starting fortnightly on the 28th of January. Yeah, there's really not that much to say other than here's the final song that you guys are going to hear from me. I need to make sure that use right, a little volume test. Oh, that rubbed against the scrape. That rubbed against the scab. I don't like that. That doesn't feel good. But right, that sounds good. I was singing in the wrong key there. Alright. This is the very last song that the podcast viewers are going to hear from me for the year, for the series. For the season. Fuck. I said like the series is ending. It's not. It's the season that's ending. You are listening to For Memories on my brand new guitar, Sapphire. This baby is just a week old. She's amazing. She's pretty cool. She's done 1 gig so far. But here we go. Some faster than others, we all know. We all sacrifice in a bath late in the evening, building up sorrow. Say that I wasted my time, 'cause I'm built by you. And I can't say that I'm glad it is over, 'cause that wouldn't be true. So thank you. Thank you. We both remember that day in the summer when you were sat on me and we cried. Oh, how we cried in that moment. Never been so happy. But I can't say that I wasted my time, 'cause I'm built by you. I can't say that I'm glad it is over, 'cause that wouldn't be true. So thank you. Oh, thank you. can say is thank you. Say that I won't miss you. Thank you all very much for listening to the podcast for however long you've been listening to, whether it be your first time or your most recent time listening to it. If you've been a fan since the beginning, since the middle, I don't know. But yeah, it's been fun. The second season of the podcast will begin on the 28th of January 2023, so I look forward to seeing you again in the new year. Other than that, there's really nothing else left to say except thank you all very much for watching. Thank you for listening to the podcast again, listening to it for however long you have been. Yeah, and I will see you all next year.